really kind of unique how we co-manage with the state DNR in this area. And then most of our units are on the Iowa side of the river, except for our Keithsburg division. And we'll talk a little bit about Keithsburg at the end and all the cool stuff that's getting ready to come up there in the next few years. So let's start with when I arrived here at Port Louisa in the summer of 19. This is a levee that was taken out by the flooding in May of 2019, and I arrived in June of 19. And so let me see, hoping, can you see my, just kind of nod your head if you can see my mouse. Can you see that at all moving? Okay. So basically what I want to show you here is the levee breach went from here all the way to here. So we're talking about 1,200 feet in length of this levee breach. And then just to kind of give it a little bit more perspective, this is the very, this is the very tip top of the levee here on the top corner. Jessica's actually standing on what was left of the core. You can kind of see something that's supposed to be from here to here is now only this. This is the Fox Pond platform, the viewing platform that you would typically stand on when you're taking your annual wildlife tour in the fall. And this picture is showing, this is the interior side of the division. So this is basically what we would normally be driving on. And then over here is the actual river if this levee had held. So pretty much for the summer of 2019, we were just waiting on the river and Mother Nature to come down enough for us to figure out how to put this all back together. And so we got that chance in the fall of 2019. You can see we're starting to have tons of equipment out on the levee, the bottom right-hand corner. You can just see how much sand and how much deposition our units were receiving and how much of that we had to reclaim to rebuild the levee back. It was quite an endeavor. And it was such a huge undertaking, pretty much from late August of 2019 all the way till February of 2020 when we reseeded. This was the priority because without this being back in place, both us and the DNR were going to be in pretty big trouble with our units. So this was an aerial, just to kind of give a little bit of scope of what we were dealing with. So this unit that you're looking at here, this is what we call MSU 21. This is our interior tour loop. Here, this is for those familiar with this is Prairie Pocket right here. And so the main levee would be along this tree line here. But this is what we still have to reclaim out of our moist soil unit in order to manage habitat properly for waterfowl. And so that's actually, fast forward to what we're doing now, that's actually, that work is happening right now. We're using Randy, the former heavy equipment operator, and some other folks, and we're just hauling sand since we have the frozen ground. So that's kind of in progress, but that's what it looked like last year from there. And you can just, the scope of it is pretty dramatic. So what we actually like to do instead of rebuilding levees and stuff, this is what we want to be doing. We want to be doing moist soil. So when we were shut down and not allowed to come into the visitor center, we still were able to meet and coordinate over the phone and over our Teams calls. And so we came up with a plan. A lot of what we do is social isolation. I mean, not a lot of people are driving around in their piece of equipment with somebody else or a tractor. So it kind of lended well to the environment we found ourselves in. And so I was able to just focus everybody's attention basically on habitat management this past summer, which in my book is a win because that's what we're here for. But I was also able to take advantage since the fire crews weren't really rolling this spring and summer as much. We did have people that went out west on the wildfires, but not nearly as much as last year. And so I was able to really capitalize on those extra bodies that we had here and get them in tractors or put them on skid steers or help clean out water control structures that the beavers had taken over. And so what we did this year was we hyper focused on our Louisa division. A lot of the crew are used to kind of going here and there, and I just kept, they get, oh, we have to go to Horseshoe to do this. No, we're staying at Louisa, we're finishing the task. We took advantage of the fact that the river was really kind to us this year and that there were low water levels. I'm sure if you guys have been in the local community, you've heard about Odessa being lower this year. Some of that was trying to be opportunistic with all the years of high water that we've had. We tried to use this year of low water to be able to get tractors and equipment into impoundments that we've never been able to get into for the last 3 or 4 years. And we were able to really set back at least 4 or 5 of our major units. What does that setback mean? Well, it means, I'm going to skip ahead and then skip behind real quick. What that means is basically getting our infrastructure in place, getting our tractors out, disking, turning over any of that rank vegetation that the last few years of flooding has given us. We want to get back to our native moist soil plants that provide tons of really great energy and food and nutrients for our migrating waterfowl. And so we had to really take advantage of these conditions and just make a hard decision to, in some areas, not reflood this year. And because we want to take advantage of the setback that we were able to create this year, keep it dry, and then as soon as we're able to this year, go in, disturb it, and then start our moist soil. And by doing this really aggressive management that we're doing right now, and getting these impoundments, like giving it almost like a 1, 2, 3 knockout punch, then we can start to get them back on a better rotation. And again, you know, this is all depending on what the river does. And as a matter of fact, at 5 o'clock today, the NOAA was supposed to release their river forecast. And so I've been looking for it all day. And I honestly, I forgot to look right before we jumped on, but if we can get a somewhat of a moderate spring, I'm really excited based on what we were able to accomplish. And those that are familiar with our units, we were able to really work our 4 and 5 unit. We were able to work our teal east and west units. We were able to work Prairie Pocket Annex. We started to do some willow movement in MSU 20. And you saw what was going on with MSU 21 with the Levee Breach that we're recovering. So those impoundments, we really went after hard, and we've got more to do this year, but it's pretty exciting, the progress that we made. So I'm gonna go back and talk a little bit about what kind of makes these moist soil and what makes these wetlands work, and that are our pumps. And so Fox Pond, it's an old pump. It's an old pump station. And so the Refuge was fortunate enough to get a new diesel power unit that we can put on our little R2D2 type thing right here with a right angle drive shaft. And then we can remove this and we can pull it, and we can pull it all the way back up to the main shop and work on it. We don't have to worry about it going underwater anymore. You can see this old pump station was really precarious. It was getting old. And so in order for this guy to work, we had to do a lot of fabrication this summer and basically expand out our Fox Pond station. And we have a little bit more concrete to pour, but we were able to get it well enough where this sat, and this was in place this year. And Fox Pond had really, really dramatic vegetation response, and pretty much for the majority of the migration, most of our waterfowl were holding pretty heavy in this particular unit. Sorry. So those of you that are like, what are you talking about, moist soil? Basically, moist soil is just growing healthy native vegetation. It's your smartweeds, it's your millets, your bidens, your cut grasses. And basically, you're trying to mimic in an artificial way natural fluctuations along the river. So natural flooding and then drying events. And so you're kind of playing your hand at Mother Nature and keeping the soil wet enough so your native good vegetation will grow, and it'll outcompete the nasty stuff that you want like rank smartweed or cocklebur and things that waterfowl or other shorebirds aren't really interested in. Okay, so if we do all the things that we were talking about correctly, then these are some of the plants, and this is what your unit should look like by late summer going into the fall months. And then if you really did it well, this is what it should really look like. And so on our path to achieve this goal, we started not only picking off the units that I talked about this summer, but we also decided to go after McNeil. So McNeil is when you first get on to the refuge, you have your Muscatine Slough observation tower on the right-hand side with the kiosk. If you look directly left across the road, those are our McNeil units. And in my opinion, one of the first things that visitors see when they come to the refuge. And so for me, it's very important to get some of that back. So again, through years of flooding, we had a lot of rank smartweed in there, just plants that the ducks don't really enjoy as much. And then we had a ton of willow starting to come in. And some willow's good, it provides a little bit of thermal cover for the birds, but at the same time, when you start to get these monocultures that we've had and not being able to get in there and treat them over the last few years, it's been kind of daunting. And so the machine here at the top right corner is called a Marshmaster. It's typically used, a lot of times it's used with our fire programs. We used it down in the Southeast quite heavily in our wetland units because it's one of those things where it can get where a tractor cannot. And so we used this unit quite a bit, excuse me, this summer to go around and spray a lot of invasive species and spray a lot of willow that were getting out of control. And so we did that not only in McNeil, but we did that in pretty much all of the units, and it's still a work in progress. This is a shared piece of equipment. And so we borrow this from Union Slough in the northwest portion of Iowa when it's not their main fire season. And so in November of this year, I had to do a lot of arm twisting, but I was finally able to get all the safety mitigations in place for us to get crews together to burn with COVID. And so you can see this is the top, the front picture there is the top corner of McNeil, and we got a really great burn on it. And it's looking really good. Some of the willows that ended up that were left standing. I actually took this picture earlier today. So you can see a little bit of the just standing biomass from some of the rushes and whatnot. But for a unit that had a really, really thick, maybe I would say over 50% of the unit was starting to be covered in some form of willow, even if it was just a sapling. We have now opened this up. We've been able to keep the water levels low. So first priority, as soon as we know what the river is going to do, as soon as we can safely get equipment in there, we will disc this unit up and then we'll flood it up. And hopefully, if all goes well, the ducks will find it next year and it'll be a really awesome unit. So this is the type of thing that we want to do to all units. So I'm a big proponent, and you can't just do one type of management to set something back. You have to really be aggressive in the beginning to get something where you want it, and then you can get it on a rotation. So this year, we're probably going to be doing a bit of aerial spraying in certain areas that are hard to get to with a tractor or any of our equipment. Then we'll follow it up with some kind of disturbance, whether it be fire or ground disturbance like disking. And then that'll help promote, and it'll turn over our native seed bank and help promote the species that that we would normally see and that we want to see in our native seed bank. So what's coming up for 2021? Well, this top picture is another picture I just took today that is staring at the top, from the top of the levee that was rebuilt, looking down into MSU 21. And like I said earlier, Randy and Mark and a few other folks that were starting to, haul sand and do as much as we can while the ground is still frozen. And so we're still trying to reclaim that division, or excuse me, that impoundment. As far as what we're looking for on the horizon, we have at one of my other refuges several of the other refuges have what's called RV programs. And so that's a program where You have a resident volunteer, whether it be a single or a couple, they come and you have an RV pad, they get a free hookup, electricity, utilities, all that, basically a free place to stay in exchange for volunteer hours. So if they're a single person, it's 24 hours a week. If it's a couple, it's 32 hours a week. And so I thought that this would be a great opportunity to help us keep somebody at the front visitor center. That wouldn't necessarily always mean the AO would have to stop whatever, or the administrative officer would have to stop what they're doing. It would be another good way to potentially get some different hiking, tour, or a birding group, or a lot of times these folks like to help out with maintenance, whether it be mowing. And so we went ahead and had a concrete pad poured over near where the fire building is, or where our old office was. And I talked to Kathy about it, and the Friends board agreed to help fund the RV pad. And so some of the things that we're still looking at right now is we're getting ready to run the water line this in the next month or two, and we've got to get the sewer hooked up. And then I'm hoping that'll be online this summer. And so it'd be really great to have a place where people can come, and normally they'll stay for, at least it's typical for folks to stay about 3 months, and then they typically go on to another refuge or another national park or Army Corps, installation site. But it's a really neat thing. You put your you put the announcement up on volunteer.gov of what you're looking for the refuge, and then you gauge the response. So that's something neat that's coming up to hopefully help build up some of our volunteer base, and maybe start to help get some neat projects going. The other thing that we're going to be doing on the Louisa division this summer with our YCC crew, and hopefully a big volunteer base, is we're going to be rehabbing the deck of the fishing pier. Again, it's one of those things that's been underwater for a number of years, and it's just sorely needed. And I think it'll just be a really, it would be a good just advantage to not let it get into such disrepair. And I think with the YCC crew this year, we have a good opportunity to have, more people to help with that project, because it's going to be quite big. And then Keithsburg. Our Keithsburg division is interesting. Most of you know we have a habitat rehabilitation and enhancement project that has been in the works for, a number of years, way before I got to Fort Louisa. I think they started talking about this in 2013 or 14. And so the original goals of the HREP were to, again, be able to provide us with better capability for water level management. And so based on some of my experiences from the past on other refuges and just what I was noticing here on the river, we worked with the Corps a bunch over the last year to sort of change some of the designs on, for example, moving from a permanent pump station to more one that's portable, kind of like I showed you in that Fox Pond picture. So when we have flooding coming, or flooding is imminent, we're not having to worry about our pump stations going under or being submerged for long periods of time, damaging our equipment. And so that project is moving along. Stage one actually kicked off and was going along this spring and into the summer. Because of the conditions on the levee, with just it being really icy and slippery right now, they had to knock off for a little bit just for their own safety. But that is stage one. So we'll be putting in a new spillway on the backside of the levee, and so that'll help this whole bathtub of spilling over and everything filling up very quickly. We're also going to be getting some new water control structures, and then, like I said, we're going to be getting new pumps. And so Keithsburg is one of those where it's going to be amazing. Stage two won't be complete probably until 2024. But it's interesting because what's happening at Keithsburg. So turn your attention to the pictures on the bottom. This was an aerial photo that was taken this fall, and staff had been sounding the alarm, and so had the forester at the Corps of Engineers for some time, that the trees at Keithsburg were in big trouble just from the years of flooding. And so what I want you to notice in both of those pictures those are taken at the end of the summer, early fall. So those trees that are standing there should be green and full of leaves. They should not be standing there dead like they are. And so one of the components of stage 2 was a forest stand improvement or a timber stand improvement. But since the start of the HREP, we've literally had about a 95%, I'm just approximating here, but tree die off. And so it's pretty devastating out there to see that tree loss. But because of that, and knowing the flooding conditions and those trees are going to come down, we're working with the Corps to figure out a plan how to safely get the trees on the ground and then get that biomass out of there in one way or another, because all of the infrastructure that we're going to be placing at Keithsburg to have that standing biomass would be problematic because it would come downstream toward where we're putting everything. And so Keithsburg is an interesting one because we've got a really great project in place. And while that was in place, the habitat just completely took a nosedive. And normally that would be completely devastating, and it is. However, because we already have this project in place and because we're working with the Corps proactively, we have a plan to, we're kind of at the basement here. Keithsburg can't go any lower. So really the only way it can go at this point is up. And so starting next week, we have a contractor that's going to be starting on Spring Slough Road on our end to be removing the dead timber on 150-foot swath on either side of the road for safety issues. And then the Corps is going to be coming in on some separate parcels, and they're going to be doing some logging and just dropping the trees. And basically we're going to be dropping the trees and piling them up and trying to just do pile burns with them. Because again, the key is to try to get that biomass out of there. So if a flood does happen, it's not going to take the trees down to our infrastructure at the south end. So Keithsburg is really cool. There's a lot of excitement there because the project has officially started. But there's been a lot of scrambling behind the scenes, trying to figure out and work collectively on what we're going to do about this tree loss, because it is dramatic. And for the public that lives over there, it's just devastating. And, a lot of these folks have lived there their entire lives. And, just in the last few years, we've seen this massive die off. And so I'm happy to be working with the Corps and trying to be proactive. So it's not going to be, we're starting next week to tackle this. So the other two divisions, big timber, we have the opportunity where we've been working on something neat with the county. It didn't get funded this year, but we're really trying and pushing for a high water boat ramp access at big timber. I felt like we were almost there this year. And so I'm not going to give up on it. I was able to get our region to commit a little bit of money to it. And I know Katie is going to try to go after the grant again next year. But that is one where we're really hoping to make that come to fruition, just because from Muscatine to Burlington, it would be the only high water boat ramp access. And then also for safety reasons, it would be a way for EMS or just anybody, law enforcement, to be able to access the river safely. So we're going to still be working toward that goal. We have all the we have all the costs, the estimates in place. And so we're just going to keep going after that. And then along with that, because of all the flooding, we did go after some grant money. It's called, it's through federal highways. It's called ERFO money. And basically it's for natural disasters or flooding. And so we did receive some money last year. It didn't actually hit our budgets. It will this year. And so at Big Timber, we're going to be removing all of the dead or dying trees around the boat ramp area that are sort of just standing there, widow makers. We're going to be able to regrade the existing parking lot down there and just try to make some infrastructure improvements in general. And so that's Big Timber. So hopefully next year I'll have a better update if we get funded for that grant. Like I said, we're going to keep trying and going after different avenues to try to make up the difference in what we need there. Horseshoe Bend, that one, I don't have too much of a slide on it. It could be its own presentation, in my opinion. A Horseshoe is one where now that Louisa, the levee's fixed, we really hammered Louisa last year. We're going to continue this year. My attention has started to shift quite a bit to Horseshoe Bend, and just looking at the hydrology out there and really what Port Louisa is going to be able to do management wise long term. We have several things that have happened in the last several years that have been a little bit challenging. The first of which is that there is a levee breach to the north of us at Horseshoe Bend, but it's on private property. And so with that levee breach being there, it impacts, let me see if I can get my mouse here. Basically, that levee breach is happening a little bit up here where the S is in Horseshoe. And so that water is coming in and down and finding Diggins Slough, and this is F Avenue here. And this Diggins Slough is basically, I don't know with how you guys' screen is set up, but the shot on the right there, that is F Avenue. And that is a constant these days, it seems. It just, whenever the gets to a certain level, now it's around 13. It used to be around 15 that it would get to this point at Diggins. It's now at 13 because of the levee breach on private property. And so because of that, we, the Fish and Wildlife Service as a staff, need to figure out what we're going to be able to actually manage, what we need to be realistic about, what should we let go back to river floodplain. For example, should we let that south portion south of Diggins, kind of let that river have that, and then just work those prairies to the north? Those are some of the conversations that staff are having right now, just given what we know about our staffing levels and just being able to be focused and actually not just manage habitat, but get it back to a place, restore it, or do what we need to do. And that just, you can't just do one thing and walk away. And so, when we only have a staff of 5 or 6, it makes it really challenging to be able to really, really get into all these areas and do what we need to do. And so the big question has been, and it's been this way at Horseshoe for quite a while, but what can we effectively manage and do well, and what are we just fighting and not winning, as far as the river goes. I mean, there's one thing I've learned from moving up this way along these rivers. I mean, the rivers are going to win. So how can we complement the river at Horseshoe while still holding true to our habitat management goals there? So that's what we're working on there. And the middle 2 pictures are just kind of silly because while we have been focusing on Louisa this whole time, the beavers have been just eating our lunch on our water control structures. The bottom one here, this took me literally 3 days to get this back opened and this water flowing through. And the top one, up here, we had to actually bring an excavator in because they had almost built like a baseball pitching mound on top of it. It's quite impressive. I really wish I could hire the beavers to help me out with some of this work I need to do. And that's really all I have. We have so many really neat things coming up this summer. We are going to be able to hire not only the YCC crew this year, but I'm going to be able to get 2 biotechs. I think you all saw in the announcement that Jessica Bolzer has officially left us. She did leave in mid-January, and she's moving on to Rainwater Basin National Wildlife Refuge in Nebraska. And she is going to be, or she is their deputy refuge manager there. And so I'm really, really excited for her. It's obviously a huge loss to us here at Port Louisa. She's been here for 10 years and I'm definitely missing her every day. But I'm really excited for her. And I texted her earlier and told everybody told her that I was going to tell you guys that, you know, where she is at Rainwater Basin, that's the big place where the cranes migrate through in the spring. So really great opportunity to see a new refuge, a different flyway, and to see an old friend. So we wish her all the best. And this summer I'm going to be wearing 2 different hats until we can get another biologist hired. So I'll be doing the management side and then kind of, I guess, not reluctantly going back into my old role of doing wildlife biology work. So it's kind of exciting in a way. I get to you know, play around in the moist soil units again. But at the same time, I told Jess she's on speed dial because I have so many questions, and she's going to be missed. But I'm really excited that we'll be able to at least get a few biotechs to, you know, to have some bodies here to get some stuff done this summer. Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to say was the Friends group has just been really instrumental this fall. We were able to, they are sort of, they have different funds that they hold for our fire program through different accounts. And so I was able to work with Kathy and the board. There's an Audubon account through the fire program. And so we were able to use that to keep a fire seasonal on a little bit longer. And he was able to continue at Horseshoe and do a ton of work. We did get a new attachment to our skid steer. I told Mark that Christmas came early this year. So we have a cutting head now on our skid steer. And so it's really great. It's been able to go after those willows that are only, you know, this big. Won't take a DBH on something like a tree this big around, but on those smaller willows, it'll mow right through them. So we're just, I guess I'm here to say even though we're not here in the building, we've made more progress on habitat than I think the crew's been able to in the last 4 or 5 years, just because we had the river conditions to do so. And we just hyper focused on it. And so that's the plan for this year. You know, I'm a habitat girl. That's what I do. That's my bread and butter. And that's, I think, you know, why they brought me here. And so that's the plan, is to just literally rock and roll as hard as we can from the minute the river gives us a break this summer till we stop pumping this fall. And so I already told my husband he's not going to be seeing me much this summer, so he should just kind of get used to it. And that's it. I'm really excited about the future. We've got so many really cool things in the fire, and I know I'm leaving a few things out, but I want to kind of stop and open it up for questions, and then just let anybody know that you can always call or email me at any time if you have specific questions about what we are doing or what we're not doing or what you think we should be doing. You know, I'm open to listen to it all. So I'll pause and turn it back over to Kathy, and then we can go from there.
Thanks, Marcy. That was fabulous. What great pictures and really good stories. So we have a pretty small group here. So instead of, you know, me calling on you, if you would like to open your microphone and ask Marcy some questions, I think she's got some time to take them. Or if you don't feel like opening your microphone, you can type them in the chat, and I'll watch that and make sure Marcy gets your question. Does anyone have a question for her or want to ask questions about the Friends group either?
I do want to pipe up because I did forget to say one thing, Kathy. When Ron and I were over at Keithsburg a few weeks back, I think I emailed you this, but we met a wonderful potential liaison named Cassie over there, and she has tons of great ties to Keithsburg. And she is a go-getter. She reminds me a lot of you. And she also is really wonderful at grant writing. And so she was very interested in getting a hold of you at some point to figure out, you know, since Keithsburg is on that side of the river, but we're all under Port Louisa, if there can be like a, if there should be like a subset, or can we all just be one? But she thinks that she might be able to get some, a small group together from that side of the river to kind of be the friends of Port Louisa from the Keithsburg, and then, or all as one. But she was pretty pumped up when I was talking to her about the different things that you guys do on this side. And then just her wheels started spinning. She was like, oh, this is so exciting. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for some different outreach or just different things we can go after. One of the things that we talked to her about was at the boat ramp that there at Keithsburg. It would be really neat to have a floating dock there and a sidewalk. So you have the boat ramp, but it would be nice to have a sidewalk where you could walk down and then potentially either moor up your boat, or you could just go down and fish right off of the dock there. So it would just be another neat opportunity for the community over there. And that's something that she thought she might be able to, go after in some grant dollars. So that was a pretty good contact. Ron just kind of happened to stop in one day, and it was pretty cool. So well, just wanted to share that.
We welcome everyone in the Friends. And if there's somebody that wants to do some work, we're all for it. And I think we'd love to partner with another group over there. I see that Jeff Weichert has unmuted himself. Jeff, did you have a question? If not, there's a question in the chat as well. Jeff, did you have a question?
No, I don't have anything. No. You're doing a good job, Kathy. I don't have anything to say.
Okay. So Marcy, Ethan has asked the question, are there plans to plant new trees after the dead ones are out, and a way to keep them alive?
Yes. So at Keithsburg, I'm assuming. So yes. So that's one of the things that Ben Vandermeid and we're all kind of scratching our heads and figuring out, well, if we replant before, our infrastructure is in place, before the spillways and our pumps are in place, is it all going to just get washed out? Do we need to build up these ridge slough areas before we replant to try to make sure they at least have some ground or at least a chance? So those are all the things that we're talking about. The original stage 2, it just had specific polygons that they had targeted for the timber stand improvement. But now that, unfortunately, now that the entire unit is what it is, the Corps is just as much back to the drawing board and really trying to figure out through all of their mechanisms, these plans, they start in 14. And so, okay, now it's 21 and we're actually getting this thing on the ground. What mechanisms do they have in place to revisit some of their own plans? So as things change over time, do they have flexibility within their own, their own rules, because it has to go through all of these different procedures. And so yes, there is a goal to replant. We just don't have the actual plan in place mainly because personally, I feel it would be irresponsible to go out and plant right now without having any water control, because we basically plant, and then if the river floods, it's done. So once we have a little bit better control of the water there, then yeah, I think so. And Ron actually just worked with, I'm forgetting the name of it's a nonprofit. It was opportunistic because the email came out 2 days ago, but it was basically talking about these massive tree plantings. And so
Living Lands and Waters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
Oh, Living Lands and Waters, you can actually go up and volunteer to help wrap their little bare root seedlings. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to get stuff planted. So.
Yeah, so Ron reached back out to her, I think it was yesterday actually, and and just kind of let her know that there was a project coming up, and we'd have to work with the Corps on all the reforestation portion of it and Ben. But yeah, I think we're all open to suggestions. It's unfortunate that what's happening at Keithsburg isn't just it's not just local to Keithsburg. It's one of those things that's happening up and down the river with these massive tree losses. And yeah, it's problematic. And so it's something that the Corps is really starting to have to kind of shift gears and think about a little bit more.
Ethan put into the chat, thanks for the answer. Adding elevation was his idea as well to keep them out of the water a little better, although not easy. I see that, Laura, you're still unmuted. So do you have some questions, some other questions for Marcy?
Oh, I just had a comment. I'm the new naturalist here in Louisa County, and we haven't really met at all, but this isn't really the place to do it. But anyway, I'm just really glad to hear that you're very focused and aggressive about habitat management, because like without habitat, like you said, what you want is the birds in the fall, and you don't have habitat, there's nothing to teach about. So it's nice to have it focused on habitat. That's great.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of, you know, if we build it and we do it correctly, then hopefully they'll come. I always say, you know, we go out and do something, and if the birds actually show up, then we'll know we did something right. You know, they're the real indicator. But no, I just, it's habitat's my passion. It's what I absolutely love to do. I started out working in the Everglades, where it was more just conservation, restoration. There wasn't a lot of, you know, active habitat management on the ground. It was more just preserving and conserving what we had and protecting it. But then when I moved to South Carolina, it was very much like it is here. Very similar in the sense of it was a waterfowl refuge. It was more of the wintering grounds, but we still had to do the same type of work. And so it's what I love to do. I love getting out on the landscape, and that's kind of why the COVID is, for me, it's kind of been one of those interesting things, because one of the things that when I switched over from being a wildlife biologist to a manager, you know, you don't get to get out in the field as much. And so you kind of get stuck behind your desk doing data calls and fun things like that. And so the one thing that COVID has afforded all of us that kind of get stuck in that same thing is we've all been able to get out there and, you know, get on a piece of equipment or, you know, drag a drip torch or whatever it is. And last year was the major setback. I think we'll start to see some really amazing results this year on some of the impoundments, but still I've got, you know, I'm already thinking 2 or 3 years out if we can get there. So I'm pretty excited. And one of the things that I would like to do this year, just because I know how it is in habitat and management, and especially when your refuge is important to the local community as ours is to really get people out and show them what it is we're doing. I've seen so many times, you know, on Facebook or whatever, oh, the refuge doesn't care about waterfowl, or they don't care about this, or they don't care about that. And that's absolutely not the truth. What that tells me is I'm not doing a good enough job getting the message out, putting those people in a truck and showing them. And hey, it's not going to be perfect, right, all the time. So what you do is you show them the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you're transparent, and you're honest, but at the same time, you're showing them, okay, this is not a good impoundment, but here's what we're doing now to make it better. And this year it's going to look like that impoundment over there. And then you start to get that buy-in from the local community that doesn't, you know, because our office here is closed, they don't think we're doing anything. And that's the exact opposite of what I want folks to think or believe. And so some of that is on me to do a better job with messaging. I unfortunately inherited Facebook from Jess when she left. So I'm not going to be able to, I'm not a photographer like she was, but I'm going to try to make up for my lack of being photogenic and having that skill and trying to tell a little bit more of our story, kind of like what we did with this PowerPoint tonight, just show some befores and some afters and really to kind of show the scope of what we have been able to do.
The rest of you, Paul or Kathy or
I have a
Jerry,
question.
questions?
I have a question for Marcy.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Why can't you take the flooded timber and log it out for logging purposes?
Well,
When that
that
timber
would, it's in, one of the things I've learned, Jeff, when I moved up here was that, we don't have control over that. That is, the Corps gets to sort of designate, if you're talking about Keithsburg, the Corps has to decide whether that is economically advantageous to them or whether it's better to drop it. In this particular case, the wood out there, it's so, I don't think there's much market value, I guess is what I'm saying. So in the Keithsburg case, I don't think there would be much value to get a commercial anybody in there. But that's one of the balances that I found, when I moved up here. The Corps really controls the forestry component of any of the land that we manage. And so a lot of the forestry component work has to go through them. But we did talk about that, and just based on what's out there, they didn't feel that it was worthwhile.
Okay, I thought it'd be a good way to get rid of the timber. And it wouldn't for everybody, but easy.
We could always issue like massive SUPs, and like everybody in Illinois could go there to get their firewood.
Are there other questions? Any other questions for Marcy? If not, I want to thank you. And those of you anyone that's on tonight that's not a member, if you would like, we didn't do our regular membership dues last year because we had a meeting in January. We had a program at the Refuge, and we had a winter series planned, and the winter series got cut. In February, right at the same time that everything else got cut. And we had some money left over from the previous year, so we decided not to do our regular membership dues because we really weren't going to be doing anything during the pandemic, not the same kinds of things. So we will be doing a membership drive this year in hopes that we can do some more fun things, educational and things where we're all together with each other. So if you're not a member and you would like to get a membership form, you can put your email or mailing address in the chat and I will send you one. And otherwise, thank you.
Yeah,
so
and
much.
as far as the spring, I don't know. I'm not sure yet exactly what's happening with our visitor centers. They're, with vaccinations and things starting to roll out. There has been talk of how we can start to look at doing that safely. And so Laura trying to figure out what that will look like for Louisa County. I know you all are interested in figuring out what we're doing, and we are too. And I am looking forward to meeting you in person here, hopefully pretty soon. And, yeah, we're going to have to kind of figure out sort of what the next plans are. I band birds, but I don't band little tiny songbirds. I'm more of a duck and a goose girl. And so, whether that means I've found a few places down in the Louisa division where I think it would be awesome to maybe either have an alternate site for the DNR to do some goose banding, and or we could potentially set up a rocket net and do some summer waterfowl banding here. And that might be a little bit of a, just sort of a trade-off for what Jess used to do. And it would get kids out, get their hands on the birds, and then they can throw them up and release them. And it's always a big fun photo op for everybody. We did that in South Carolina for wood ducks a bit. So anyway, just thinking of different opportunities just different ways to get the public out. And, you know, I've got 3 young kids, and I always say that if we don't get people like my kids interested, then everything I'm doing and everything I believe in and stand for is all for naught. And so you know, any suggestions you all have, I'm open. You know, I just love the mission of the refuge system, and I want to do what I can to help Port Louisa out. And a lot of you have been in this community for a really long time, so I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. So my phone is always available. And I just appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.